Hey everyone, happy Wednesday. If you started with our new round of daily devotions last week, you heard that I'll be doing Proverbs on Wednesday. Pastor Fieberkorn said I'm an expert on Proverbs. Apparently his definition of expert is that I own 2 books on a subject and I've read one. So if I'm an expert, here we go. Anyhow, I'm happy to be with you, and I'm actually excited to talk about the book of Proverbs. The book of Proverbs is one of my favorites in the Bible, and not just is it one of my favorites, I feel like it's a very, very needed thing in our world. Wisdom is something that we tend not to prize very highly, and the book of Proverbs is going to remind us that we should be aiming towards wisdom often, both for our own good and also for our witness in this world. So what I want to do today is, instead of just a brief devotion, I want to introduce you to a couple things that I think are important for how we approach the book of Proverbs. I'll probably, over the course of multiple of these, if you tune in every Wednesday, I'll probably do a little bit of this work just to try to help you become even better reader of the Bible yourself, to kind of get some advice on how to do this. So let me start by jumping in and teaching you a couple things about how Proverbs work. See my bullets here? Proverbs guide us to reflect on the past. That's how Proverbs come about. People think back on how their life has gone up to this point, how God has ordered the world, how God has created our lives so that they work best in the world. And looking back at the past, we then get to, second bullet there, guidance for the future. Proverbs, so you know, aren't promises. They aren't prophecies. They're good, practical advice for how you and I are meant to live in this world. And that bottom bullet there is really important. They're meant to guide us toward maturity. So as I was getting ready for today, I was reading an author about the book of Proverbs, and he said, hey, the book of Proverbs, it's one of only a handful of books in the Bible that actually tells you its specific purpose. You heard Pastor Fieberkorn last week reference the beginning of the book of Proverbs, understanding that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. That's true. Inside that section, it also says that the point of the book of Proverbs is so that we would grow in maturity, that we would grow in understanding, that we would learn about God's wisdom. So that's what we're aiming to do when we study Proverbs, to aim to become more spiritually mature people. Something that's really important to me that differentiates the book of Proverbs from most of the Bible. Proverbs require slow, careful reading. The reality is, most of the time when we're reading the Bible, I actually feel like we read it too slowly. We tend to stop too often. We tend to read a verse and say, what does this mean? And I want to be like, well, what's the next verse say? Read me a paragraph, read me a page. Maybe I'll sit back and reflect. So that's what I tend to believe when I read the Bible, that we read it too slowly. On the flip side, the book of Proverbs is meant to be read as slowly as possible. Reading the book of Proverbs isn't about memorizing 5 verses a day. It's about learning how to savor one verse for as long as we can, that we could look around at the world that we live in, look at ourselves, look at our lives in this world, and determine how much we're living that proverb in the world. Attentiveness, my second bullet here, means something like that. That after you and I read one proverb, what we should do is then we should turn our attention to life. We should try to see how we see that proverb functioning in our world. The last one here, this is one of my hobby horses. I really believe this. One of the benefits of studying a book like Proverbs is we need to be about seeking wisdom and not just information. To be clear, I'm not anti-information, fond of information. Information has its purpose. But it just interests me that over the past couple decades, as information has become more readily accessible to every single person in the world, probably we would have guessed that wisdom would also increase with information. And I'm here to tell you, it is not. Wisdom is something we ought to strive for. We ought to learn about and look for. We ought to realize that not just information provides wisdom. Something deeper is necessary. That's what we're going to be aiming for. So here are a couple things that are true. They'll be true of our Wednesday devotions. This devotion itself, it's not meant to every week provide you with new information. It's also not meant to be a holy moment that you check off your list and feel like a better follower of Jesus because you spent 5 minutes in a devotion once a day. That's a good idea. I like doing that. The point is that a devotion like this is meant to provide you with a tool to then look at your life, look at that day, look at that week, however you want to do it. That's what wisdom takes. It takes hearing these words and then seeing how these words play out in your life. Also, something that you and I ought to be reminded of, there are some proverbs in the book of Proverbs that probably are just good advice for anyone. Literally any human being living on earth would benefit from knowing these proverbs. One of the things that you and I ought to be mindful to do is to remember that there are other times when the world's wisdom, not only is it not as good as God's wisdom, it's actually contrary to God's wisdom. So that's something we're going to do, is maybe bump into moments where we realize that the world might teach us one thing, but to be a follower of Jesus in this world, to be one of God's children in this world, means we're going to follow a different kind of wisdom. Here's today's proverb. The reason I chose this one is because it's meant to show you and me how Proverbs is not just information. It's taking these words from God and seeing how they function in our life. So you'll see here that this proverb, it's like 2 lines, how they actually say the opposite thing. Now, there'd be other parts of the Bible where if it said one thing and then the opposite in the course of a verse or two, it would be confusing to you and to me. The reason why this can function in a book like Proverbs, it's going to be something that will become clear as you and I spend a few minutes with Proverbs in these daily devotions. Both of these are true. Wisdom is learning how to take this information and apply it to your life and my life. Here it is. Answer not a fool according to his folly, lest you be like him yourself. Meaning something like, you're in a conversation, you hear someone say something off the wall. This one says, just don't join that conversation. Just, let the person blab, move on. Because if you join the conversation, you end up looking like a fool yourself. Here's the second part. Answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own eyes. There you have it. 2 proverbs, both from God's holy word, saying the opposite things. That's the information, but wisdom is spending time with this, looking around at your life and saying, hey, are there moments when I could probably just keep this to myself, lest I become like the fool? Are there times when I need to speak up because I can't have that fool look wise in their own eyes? Those are good questions, and they'll only be answered in your life. I'm going to close with a prayer. Here it goes. Lord, help me to be wise, not according to the world's standards, but according to yours. Help me to choose daily the way of wisdom and the way of Jesus. Amen. Hey, it's been nice being with you. Check in often. We've got 4 daily devotions popping out every week. Pastor Fiebercourt and I will be splitting them. It'd be good to be with you. Check in. See you next time.